Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Let's Talk ETC. I have with me today Husain Fazel and Kyle O'Neill, and they're going to be talking about the Slips project startup that is supporting Ethereum Classic. So welcome, Kyle, and welcome, Husain.
Hi, Chris.
Did I pronounce your names right?
Yeah, you pronounced it perfectly.
Okay, good. So before we get into Slips, why don't you introduce yourselves to the audience? Give us a little bit of your background.
Sure. I think Kyle should go first, so I'll let him go first.
Okay. All right. So my name's Kyle. I'm a communication designer. I just love to explore ideas and solve problems with design. So usually that entails me creating images and videos, creating UIs, and mapping out the user experience to make it more enjoyable. And yeah.
Did you work on your website? Because I noticed it was pretty fancy. Did you have a say in that?
Oh yeah, that was all my direction.
Yes. So people should look at that slips.io, a very cool website.
There's actually an intro video if you click on the About page. When we started the project, Kyle actually, we'll probably explain this in a bit. So we were testing each other out, and we needed something as a hook to show people. We didn't have a product at that point, so Kyle actually did the entire video within a week by himself. And I've been amazed by him as we've kind of got to know each other. But the video was kind of my jaw-dropping moment. I was like, "Wow, you do amazing stuff."
So hire Kyle if you want cool marketing materials. Then
definitely. I can give myself a really quick introduction. So my name is Husain. I'm actually living in the Netherlands at the moment. I'm going to be joining Kyle in San Francisco soon. By trade, I'm a programmer. So most of my life, I've spent it as a web application developer. I've always, since I was really young, I've always been entrepreneurial minded. So when I was 16, there was lots of opportunities. You could pretend over AM to be a 40-year-old man and talk to CEOs. So I was always, coming up with ideas and products. And over the last few years, it's always been my day job, and then sort of spending it working on startups as well. I've never really got to the point where I found somebody that I could work with, because startups are very lonely experience. You're kind of up against the world. So it's only recently that I met Kyle, and suddenly I had all the firepower to actually build something, and actually put something out there and take it to the next level. So that's a little bit of introduction to me.
Great. So you were always designing products, you said, so you always were creative. Then it sounds like it always kind of the entrepreneur mindset.
Yeah, definitely. Well, the thing with programming is that most of my work was full stack, and if you have any experience with that at all, you know that everything is always changing. There's always a new JavaScript framework. There's always something changing on the front end, or a paradigm change and so on. And I was keeping up with it, but there's always a tipping point for me, and especially in the last few years. So every time. So I am interested, and I could spend all day in front of an IDE, and I can go into programming. I'm quite happy doing that. But there's always a true calling, and for me, it was always building something that people could actually use. And I think that's what really kind of motivates me about being an entrepreneur. So I've always found that as much as I like that, what really gets me going is building Slips and making when people actually use Slips. That gives me the greatest pleasure. So I've kind of naturally drifted this way as my career's gone on.
Okay, good. So, all right. So we've mentioned Slips a couple times already. So why don't we break the suspense and kind of introduce us? Tell us what Slips is now.
Okay, then. Well, I think I'd have to go back a little bit and explain this phenomenon of people actually watching streams. I think, especially in the last few years, this is something that's really grown. You might have heard of Justin.tv, which was a video platform. They did quite well, but one of their spin-off products, which was what is now called Twitch, where gamers could upload streams of them playing, that actually exploded. So they actually pivoted fully from Justin.tv to Twitch. Now there's other clones as well. There's YouTube have got something, Facebook have launched something, Mixer is another big clone. And it's also spawned a whole genre of users who actually, competitive gaming has been growing as well, alongside this. But there's a lot of people who get into gaming, they want to show off their skills and entertain people. Kyle has always been interested in this. And a few years ago, he actually stumbled upon a stream, I think it was called XBC, where the users were actually engaging with the users. So they were doing something which is called IRL streaming, which is in real life streaming. So they were going around with their camera, doing real life stuff and streaming it to the audience. And the audience were engaging, and he was really fascinated by this, how this all worked. And that's kind of where the concept of Slips came. We decided that that's quite immersive and enjoyable in its own right. But if you could actually make challenges whilst you're watching that, so for example, you're watching your favorite streamer play Fortnite or whatever popular game is going on. How about if you the streamer made challenges to the people watching? So, for example, I'll kill this level and I'll finish it in 3 minutes, or I'll get 50 kills, or so on. Or people in the chat, whilst they're naturally watching, there's always a little bit of banter and trash talking. So that kind of develops into, hey, you really think he's going to finish this level? Why don't you put some money on it?
Okay.
All right. The concept came from. It's a little bit of, so, we're in a niche that's, I know if I had my pitch deck in front of me, I could tell you some numbers, they're explosive numbers, the industry in itself is quite growing. It's growing from the perspective of esports gambling. So professional events where you have players, for example, the Dota 2, which is a game, they had a prize pool of 11.2 million. So the numbers involved in it are quite huge. In terms of gaming, it's a little bit smaller. So there's esports betting and there's gaming. We are a little bit different because we don't want to go for the hardcore betting. We're kind of focusing on the more fun challenges side of the market.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, I can personally vouch for this fascination with game streaming. My son is really into it. And he had visions of making money by getting an audience watching him. And I kind of he was getting a little too obsessive about it. So I had to kind of put the brakes a little bit on it. But yes, I do see the kids really enjoying this, watching gamers play online. So that, in my own family, that's happening.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, one of the statistics I have is I just mentioned the Dota 2 prize pool, but I think the PGA Tours, the winners of that actually got less than what the Dota 2 winners got, and I think even the Super Bowl prize was a little bit less. There is a phenomenal amount of money in the ecosystem, and game streaming is actually it's almost like a viable career for young people to actually go into. I think the economy in the world is changing. A lot of the jobs that we had in the past don't actually exist anymore, and entertainment becomes a viable option. Maybe as a society we're probably going too deep into it, but as a society we're moving into a place where we can explore our creative and artistic pursuits, and this is one that really seems to be catching on. So this is the opportunity that we saw, and we decided that there is kind of an opportunity here for us and for Slips.
Yeah, great. So can you also now elaborate? So you had this idea, and how did you come to maybe you had it from the beginning to do it with blockchain technology, and how did that lead go there? And then can you also talk about how you got involved with ETC Labs?
Yeah, definitely. In terms of how we got blockchain involved, I'll be completely honest with this, because for us the entire process has been one where we've set up with a direction or a strategy, and then we've changed as we've gone along. We wanted to be, for the lack of a better term, we wanted to be very honest with ourselves and the public as well. I've known blockchain for a while. I actually sent an email to a friend of mine back in 2013. I explained to him how Bitcoin works, how it gets scarcer, and we should really buy in right now. The prices dropped because of this, and so on. And we never followed up on it. But I think in the last bull run, and I think really at the start of that, we a friend of mine, we, again, like I said, entrepreneurial pursuits has always been a thing. So we had this thing going and it didn't really work. We had to split the payment to the cost of what we'd done. And I said to him, how do we split this up? I had just moved country, so I couldn't really, send it to his bank account. I was like, do you want me to send you some Bitcoins? And we dug some further into it. And, obviously in the next 3 or 4 years, it had grown massively since then. And Kyle and I, we are part of a WhatsApp group. We've been kind of, immersed in blockchain for a while. So to be completely honest, the idea of Slips was something, in 2017, everyone was thinking about what can they do with blockchain technology. So we had similar sort of discussions. And we wanted to build something that was quite nice. And we came up with various different ideas. And eventually the entire group, we kind of all converged on this one thing. There's a real range of ages. So we've got people who are 21 all the way up to 50. And, most of them are gamers, and most of them, the idea of betting on esports and betting on streams, that was something that everyone was unanimously, they agreed that's a really great idea. So we all got together and we decided to start fleshing out the idea. And as things go, like one person suggests something, another person suggests something. And the idea was that we looked at what was actually present out there. There were some solutions where what they do is, and this really goes into the crux of things, most people, for the bet result to be settled, you need to know what the result was. So they normally get the results from the APIs of the game. So, for example, Counter-Strike will tell you that Team A won or Team B won. That kind of restricts you in terms of what bets you can do. You can only do a bet that Team A or Team B won, or whatever the API is going to provide for you. And we thought that's, especially with Carl's experience of in real live streaming, you want the bets to be creative and people to have fun making up those challenges. So we decided to look at some of the principles that were happening in blockchain, how the game theory kind of keeps people honest and so on. And we decided to apply to that. So we have this arbitration system where the users, they try and settle the bets themselves. And if they can't, they bring in outside arbitrators. And the blockchain component comes from the trust and we're solving a lot of the common problems that a lot of blockchains that are dealing with trust and reputation do. So we're not so much as innovating or creating a whole new branch as sort of building on the shoulders of giants already that exist.
Right. So are you using multisig contracts? I don't know. Do you know what that is? So
I do. And no, the answer is no, we're not. So here's the thing. And I think we'll go into this a little bit further later on. We're trying to, for our product, the simplicity of it has to be the most important thing.
Right.
Nobody's really asking for a decentralized blockchain platform. That's, the betting platform. That's not really on the cards for anyone. So we're actually centralized in lots of different ways. So, for example, what happens is, I think in terms of how we deal, so we use blockchain. We use cryptocurrencies as a transaction source because that is actually really amazing for us. Because I've worked in a lot of high risk industries. One of the problems that high risk industries have is that payment processors, they're a major thorn in our backside. They they hold the keys to, you have high chargebacks, or people are likely to do things that are a little bit
Right.
They're likely to value. So from our perspective, being able to do it in cryptocurrencies, it means that nobody can censor our transactions. If it's legal to gamble where you live and you're of age, you can do that. And, it doesn't matter if PayPal doesn't operate in your country or, it doesn't give you access or anything like that. How we actually, so instead of multisig, so the bet is made, and instead of having it in a smart contract, which, the Oracle feeds in data and then the funds are unlocked, rather than doing that, we actually centralize that part. So users send us the funds, we sweep it into our hot wallet. When it comes to withdrawals, so we make all the bets in our system. When it comes to withdrawals, we allow the withdrawal to take place. The only place the smart contract is actually used is where the arbitrators are involved.
Okay. So arbitration. Okay. Now, so just to play devil's advocate, why? I'm just curious how you'd answer this question. So why do you need blockchain at all? Why not do everything on the website with the web application? Would that be adequate?
That's a good question. And I think I started to answer it earlier on. So for us, again, the key thing was never, we didn't want to shoehorn cryptocurrency. So we don't have our own token. We use Ethereum Classic. We didn't want to shoehorn the token into it. Again, it comes from a usability point of view. So if you can just imagine that, we're trying to appeal to gamers, and we're trying to appeal to normal people, not people who have blockchain at the moment. If you heard of it or you're involved in it, you're probably an early adopter. If you heard about it in 2013, you're a very, very early adopter. Right now, it's still not mainstream, and we want to appeal to a mainstream audience. So we can't say to them, "Hey, can you go and buy Bitcoin? And then can you go into this exchange? Please don't Google it because it does say that they're hacked, but that's fine. And then can you exchange, Bitcoin for some other random weirdo token, and then send it? That's really complicated. All we can say to people is, hey, can you go? If you've heard of Coinbase, it's really highly rated on the App Store. Can you just download Coinbase, buy some Ethereum Classic, and send it to Slips? So from that perspective, we're always talking about the usability point of view. So the more aspects of blockchain that we involve, if it's not needed in our application, we don't include it. Right. In terms of the trust and the reputation, well, when it comes to money, there's a very important stage here where you're trusting somebody who is meant to arbitrate between you. And there's a lot of for example, there's a lot of ways that people might try to game the system. And we thought that this is somewhere where blockchain, where everything is open, is quite useful. With reputation, if somebody is staking money into a contract and they're not allowed to withdraw the contract because of the rules of the smart contract, they're only allowed their reputation every time somebody arbitrates a bet. Mm-hmm. All the participants of the bet are allowed to rate them. So you see all the ratings that the user is receiving. We have an algorithm which, and to be honest, I could have known to this point that we haven't actually developed this part yet. Proof of concept hasn't got to that point. But the algorithm determines based on how many ratings that the user has received and how much money they've staked versus everyone else has staked in the ecosystem, how many jobs that they get. So we thought that this actually deserves a little bit of transparency and openness. And the mechanism of blockchain and smart contract actually works for this. And the thing is, again, this is one of those things where you mentioned ETC Labs. Mm-hmm. One of the things about ETC Labs is we've got an actual direct link with the ETC dev team, and that gives us a lot of opportunities to ask them how this works, how we'd be able to do this, and so on. I'm actually here in the Netherlands yet, so I haven't really got to San Francisco, but this is something that we have on the cards. We have this real structured 2 to 3 months incubation period with ETC Labs, and during the process, we'll be kind of investigating where do we go with this. Right.
No, that's good, and I think. I agree with what you're saying. So the purpose of a company is to provide a service, to make it user-friendly, easy to use, right? It's not to promote blockchain technology. And so Kyle can back me up on this if he agrees, but I always felt that it was a company should try to use blockchain technology and almost make it appear like they're not using it, like integrate it with the website so well that the user doesn't even necessarily have to know, right? Because you're not trying to sell them on blockchain technology. You're trying to provide a service that uses it. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. I was waiting for Kyle to back you up on that, but yeah, I do agree with you. Yeah, I think it's part of the thing. We've explored a lot of and we're actually thankful that a lot of our competitors they're stuck with a token that they need to integrate, or they're stuck. For example, one of our competitors, I could name them, I think it's Gimbal now. They raised 1.7 million, and that was about a year and a half ago now. They haven't come up with a working product yet. So they've got this token which they're going to have to list on an exchange, and it'll probably cost them the best part of a few million to do that. And every single one of their bets will be executed on a smart contract. The thing is, there's a lot of problems in blockchain. So, for example, you have the key problem, which is scalability. You have to solve scalability. That's a big problem. And there's a lot of smart people, a lot of people who are smarter than us working on solving scalability. And around that, you have Ethernode that you interviewed a while ago. They're working on infrastructure tools, which is equally important. And I think it's in layers. At some point, you've got the mainstream audience, and you need somebody to build apps that kind of that catch the attention of the mainstream audience. And they have to work on a problem which is equally important, which is user experience. And I think that's something that we do. I think that's where we position ourselves.
Yeah. Now, I don't want to tell you how to run your business, but here's an idea that you mentioned, that you ask people to go to a place like Coinbase to buy ETC tokens. Could you, in the spirit of user friendliness, would it make sense to allow people to buy ETC tokens on the Slips website? So in other words, you become a little mini exchange to make it even easier, that people don't even have to leave your website even for that little step.
Yeah, we actually, I think it's Changely, I might be wrong here. They have an API system that lets you kind of embed that. We actually looked into that. Our biggest problem is our team. So we have 2 freelance developers who work with us. We hired them when we were working on our proof of concept and came out of our savings. And now with ETC Labs investment, we can engage them full time. But apart from that, that's Kyle doing most of the design work and me doing a little bit of the programming and a lot of the overview. So our team we've got a huge amount of things that we're working on. We don't have a lot of resources with which to do it. So we're always fighting, that. I think our biggest challenge at the moment, to be completely honest, is the marketing aspect, because we've actually, our proof of concept, it took us 5 months to build Slips.io, or 4 or 5 months to build Slips.io. I think we've finally got it to the point where it's usable. The
MVP, minimum viable product.
Yeah, proof of concept, minimum viable product. That's what we've got, because the thing is, if we're actually going to what we should be doing, we actually feel that one of our main things is we want to keep people on the sites and the platforms that they already use. So if you use Twitch, you don't have to stream on Slips. You use Twitch and stay on there. So we have this app that takes people away from Slips, which is something that we're saying that other gambling sites do, and that's not good. Ideally, what we'd like to do is, and I think you might have seen it if you look at some of our marketing material in the past, we wanted to either do a browser plugin, or a lot of streamers use something called Streamlabs, so kind of integrate directly into the streaming software that they use. So that whilst their stream is on Twitch, our user interface actually gets embedded into the actual stream itself. So there's a lot of things that we'd like to do, but we're at the stage first where we had this idea, we had this concept about a year ago, and within the space of 5 months, we built this proof of concept. And the idea is, right now we're solving 2 problems, which is one, not 2 problems, we're exploring 2 problems. One is, does this really hit the spot, and do people, can this become something much bigger than what we have right now? And 2, how do we get it into people's faces, or get it into people's attention spheres, so that they can go and try it out? So those are the 2. So whilst we're with ETC Labs, those are the 2 main things that we're trying to explore.
Okay. Now you mentioned ETC Labs a couple times, and I'm personally very grateful for their support for Ethereum Classic. Can you kind of tell your story of how you found out about ETC Labs, how you got hired by them, and what that experience has been like? Yeah,
sure. So we like most startups, last year we managed to get a bit of grant funding, and it was a little bit so we actually got to the point where we had a month's worth of savings left, and we were getting turned down by investors all the time. Nobody. So we, when you said to us, "How did you get into blockchain?" One of the, why did you want to do a blockchain product? ICOs were really popular at the start of 2017, end of 2017, maybe even a little bit of 2018, and we thought an ICO, that would be amazing. We'd have all this fun. We knew that we were hardworking. We knew that we could create a product. We found out that there's, you're selling an unlicensed security in most cases. There's no real use for the token. So we scratched that off the list. We're not going to do that. We tried to find, because it's really hard to build a product like this when you're doing full-time work as well. Right. So we tried the traditional thing, and we were getting turned down, and we were doing a lot of work, a lot of hoops, and we're still being turned down. We decided, okay, we're going to build our proof of concept. We got a little bit of grant funding to do this, and plenty of times we, really dicey, where our funds were almost exhausted, the usual startup stuff. Mm-hmm. So we came across ETC Labs as we were building our proof of concept in about, I think it was August, September time.
Oh, wait, can I stop you right there? So before you got involved with ETC Labs, you were getting grant funding. So I'm just curious, who was nice enough to give you grant funding for your startup? Did they have an investment stake in your work?
No, they didn't have an investment stake in us. It was actually a little bit of serendipity. Kyle actually knows, through his mum, he knows a lady that works at a blockchain platform. She's she was working with one of the crypto OGs. He's somebody that's been involved with cryptocurrencies for a while, and he again, a little bit like you, he has a young child, and he saw the kind of the potential in our idea. And he also wanted to kind of, so when he got involved in blockchain, Luke Dash Jr. gave him, one of the Bitcoin core developers, gave him a few Bitcoin. So he had a lot of support in the early stages. So he kind of wanted to pass that on as well. So saw the two of us, that we were working really hard on this concept and everything that we'd done at that stage. And he was like, I'm going to help you guys, build your platform. So so he gave us, so it wasn't any equity stake in our company, which was really nice of him. He gave us a lot of support to kind of build what we were doing. And to be honest, without his help, we wouldn't have actually got to this stage. But it was, the thing is, we almost exhausted our savings at that point, and we just started emailing, reaching out to people. I think, when you're working with limited resources, you become really creative. And I think that really kind of inspired us and motivated us. And we also had I could go on quite long, but I'm sure you've heard of a lot of crypto influencers. There were people that were saying that Bitcoin last year, in 2018, by the end of the year, it would be 60K. And I'm not going to name any names, but we spoke to Ian Berliner. I can mention him, but I'm not going to mention the rest of the names. There was some really dodgy stuff going on. Like one person offered us $1 million in investment, and it came with a lot of strings attached, and what he wanted to do with us didn't really seem ethical at all. So we had those highs where, you've been funded, we're going to help you and we'll support you. And then the very next day, there comes the attachment. It wasn't a great period of time. But the thing is, we had this grant funding. So we knew that for a few months we would be okay. And we put everything that we had into building this proof of concept that you see on Slipsio. And at that time we had decided that we've got this little smart contract thing. In terms of, if we were talking with streamers and mainstream Bitcoin, almost everyone has heard of it. We'd ideally love to do that on Bitcoin. But you can't really build applications on Bitcoin. You can use it you can try and use it as a form of money, but that's about the extent of it. So we had decided that we were going to go with an Ethereum network. So I think it was just by chance that we saw the ETC Labs was announced in May, and around August, September time, we saw that they were promoting the incubator. Kyle really encouraged me, because I do a lot of writing. You might have seen some of the stuff on our Medium blog and so on. I do a lot of the writing. So Kyle was like, why don't we give it a shot, see if they'd be interested in us? So we applied. A few weeks later, we heard from Elizabeth Cooker, who's the head of ETC, so the head of the program, and we started a dialogue with her. So over the next few months, we made it to point. I think we overloaded her at one point. Send her updates of what we were doing. Say, hey, we've just built these videos on absolutely nothing. We managed to convince this really great voice artist to narrate the whole thing. So she saw the videos that we'd put together. Hey, we've just built the challenge interface. And every time Kyle would do some mock-ups, we'd send it over to her. So the relationship kind of developed over a period of time. And I think around November time, they were deciding on who was going to be part of the first cohort that starts in January. And they offered us an investment and an opportunity to be part of ETC Labs at that point.
Great. That's a great story. By the way, a comment you made reminded me of a podcast. I heard the creator of Ruby on Rails. He was talking about how he doesn't think it's a good idea to get too much early funding with strings attached, and that if you don't have funding and you're limited, it forces you to do just what's the most important, right? Not waste too much time. And it sounds like that's you guys, that you would agree with that. You were right. You were limited in your resources, so you had to do just the most important to get your minimum viable product moving, and you avoided the people that are trying to get control of your startup. So yeah.
Definitely. So from our point of view, I think necessity was the mother of invention. So because we had these constraints, and we always had that thing that next month we could be out of money and we'd have to go and find jobs and leave Slips, because that was always the thing. That was it's a very strong motivator, because I like the freedom that comes with running Slips, because as much as it's hard, we also have a lot of, it's very rewarding in itself. So the fact that we were always constantly running out of money, we always had this pressing need that we had to get it done. So there was never any let up.
Right. Whereas if you had like a lot of funding, somebody was, taking majority control of your company, there wouldn't be that pressure to keep progressing, and you might be less successful, ironically.
No, yeah, I mean, you see that with the other. So I think if you go on to the Slips Medium blog, we actually we have a really good intelligence gathering system. So we always wanted to know what our competitors are doing. And they can't, I always say that they can't sneeze without us finding out about it. We know what stage they're at with the development of the product. And there's a few of them that have raised millions and millions of dollars, and they still haven't shipped anything. They're going to all of these events, and I think a lot of blockchain projects that raised ICOs, they do this. They go to events and then they'll take photos and say that's networking and whatever, or partnership building. So they're doing a lot of stuff that is not their core development, or they've hired really large teams, or they've spent a lot of money on travel and various other expenses. And it's natural when you're too comfortable. You're not in the state of mind that we are, where we're kind of battling for our survival, to put a very dramatic.
Right.
And I think I just wanted to mention one other thing was that. For us, ETC Labs, so there's a lot of things that ETC Labs offer, and I will go into it later on. But one of the most important things when you're trying to develop a product, you're trying to build something, you're trying to create something, finance is one of those important things. So for us, the fact that ETC Labs were kind of investing in projects in the ETC ecosystem, that was a real, that was the thing that first attracted us to them. It is what it is, runway is like crucial to all startups. And I think this was very lucrative. They were making an offer which was it was comparative to a lot of incubators in Silicon Valley at that time. So that was great. And then there's all the other things around it as well, which really help. But we can talk about that a little bit later on. I just wanted to make that point. So
No. Yeah, that's what I was going to ask next was, can you talk about the experience working with ETC Labs? Has that been really rewarding and exciting? And are you looking forward to going to San Francisco and interacting more with the team there?
Yeah, I think I've spoken quite a lot. Kyle is actually in San Francisco right now, so he's got the pleasure.
Yes. You want to fill us in, Kyle?
He's got the pleasure of walking into Ellis Street every single day, so I'm sure he can tell you a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. We're right in the heart of San Francisco. The people in there are just incredibly brilliant, really supportive, and high energy. You come in there, you're working on your product day in, day out with, usually it's just me and Husain and Emad and Khaled, but as soon as you get in there, they're throwing ideas at you. It's a really collaborative space, and it's amazing. I love it. Absolutely love it.
So you have other startups there, and you guys all kind of support each other. Is that what you meant?
Yeah, that's what it's been so far.
Okay, and you find that being at an incubator like that and being around other hungry startups, do you think you're progressing faster than you would if you weren't there?
Absolutely. It's like the meeting of the minds. There's a lot of different perspectives. Sometimes you're very tunnel vision about your product. You have a vision for it, but then someone suggests another option, and it just totally opens up your perspective of what your product could be. And then, you're suggesting ideas about their product, and then it's a collaborative piece that I think is really essential to growing our businesses, and it's just incredible.
Okay, very cool.
There was actually one thing I wanted to interject, and so I don't have first-hand experience with this, but Kyle did. One thing that ETC Labs does is they throw together workshops, and there's also dinners and events as well. We have this thing that we're sometimes very hard on ourselves. It's almost like, so there's times when Kyle has rang me up and says, do you really think, I shouldn't be admitting this, but do you think Slips will work out? You have those moments of doubts and so on.
Oh, sure. Everybody does.
Yeah. So we've had those moments. So Kyle, the other day, he was, I don't actually know the name of the lady, but he was, they had a lady that came in and he showed her the idea and our project plan and a few things. And she was so enthusiastic. So you have these big people who are either partners at VCs or they, or they're, creating opportunities and so on. Big people in business connected in Silicon Valley coming in, doing these workshops, and then you get a chance to talk to them and they validate your idea. And that gives you a little bit of a shot in the arm. And for us, when Kyle relayed that story back to me, I was on cloud 9 for a few days as well. it gives you a real kind of boost. I think the other part of the incubator that we didn't mention, Carl didn't mention, was that there are those kind of connections, and I think that's been really good for us because we're not first time founders. We have tried a few things, but this is really we're green at this, and this is the first time that we've got to this stage, and it's all quite new to us. So it's nice to have that network of support, and it's nice to have those opportunities to meet these people. We wouldn't normally have those introductions at all.
Right.
Yeah. For example, last week we talked with David Galvin, the senior vice president at MasterCard. I mean, what a perspective he had.
Yeah.
Just on the blockchain thing, payment gateways. We're networking with some incredible people. I think that's even a bigger advantage for going into the incubator.
Sure. So as we come to the end, why don't we, for the last part, why don't you kind of talk about what your plans and dreams are for the future for Slips and for what you see happening with ETC Labs, your relationship with them in the near future?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think anyone that's listening to this interview, I hope that they want to know a little bit more about us. But I didn't, we're not a permanent fixture in the ETC minds right now, and that's kind of understandable. I think a lot of people listening to this, they're probably interested in, they want to find out more about ETC Labs. And they want to find out, what's ETC Labs bringing to the table. So I've been talking, and Carl has been talking about all the positives. We're grateful that they're giving us investment. We're grateful that they're doing this. I'll give you kind of like the whole kind of perspective as well, a little bit more about that. But in terms of our own kind of personal objectives, so we're part of this the first cohort. So that actually ends, I think, mid-April sometime, and it's kind of leading towards a demo day, where we have our own kind of investment pipeline. We're reaching out to VCs and investors who might be interested. And I think ETC Labs will be putting together something as well. And the idea is that all of the startups that are working in the same cohort as us will all do this big presentation, and we'll try and raise a Series A round. So our immediate, to be perfectly honest, I'd be more interested in working on our product at the moment. There's a lot of interesting things that we need to do. And I mentioned the two big things. One, we want to test our product with users, and two, we want to test out how do we get to people who might be interested in Slips? How do we let them know that we actually exist? In the short term, we're working with them during that incubation period and doing a lot of our own work to try and get that done. And we're kind of bookending that with this big attempt to raise some money. And hopefully at that point, it won't just be me and Carl, but we'll be able to hire people for the first time. And we'll be able to do some more amazing things. In terms of kind of what we want to do, we've kind of become, so as part of this process, and I think it's one of those, we've been immersed into ETC. I'd be quite honest and say that about 6 months or even a year ago, I was aware of the DAO, and I was aware of why ETC is. And actually, like most people, if you tell them the story of the DAO and what happened, most people will, blockchain immutability, you lost, the funds were lost, and should we recover the funds? Most people end up supporting the ETC side of things. You sometimes hear a few stories of, wild conspiracy theories of why ETC existed, that sometimes cloud the picture, but on the whole, most people, they support why ETC. As we've been kind of immersed into ETC in kind of the community, and I've seen what other people or firsthand what's happening in the ETC community, I've seen some people that do a lot. And for example, you're one of those people who are spending a lot of their own private times promoting ETC. I think I don't know if these names are quite familiar, but there's a new marketing person for ETC Labs right now, guy by the name of Dean, who is I think he's absolutely amazing. His key remit is to kind of promote ETC. And I think that's one of those things that you absolutely, so the work that you're doing in terms of interviewing people like us and technical tutorials and so on, we need more of that. as much as you need developers, and as much as you need people working on the blockchain as well, you need the other side of things as well. I, at least from my perspective, I think that's quite amazing that we've got people who are now full-time evangelizing the ETC platform. And for us being immersed in the ETC platform, we've kind of seen how the key figures work, and we're hoping that we can become a bigger part of the community as well. Kyle did a little bit of work for the ETC Labs core dev team. He came up with a logo for them. So there are ways in which we can help, but I think the biggest ways in which we can help is actually to produce an application that really promotes Ethereum Classic, shows that, really successful applications can be built on the platform. So, that's what we want to do. In terms of, you kind of asked me about ETC Labs. So after the demo day, we'll probably be part of the ETC Labs alumni. But we're hoping that for us, we'll raise some more money and we'll hopefully take Slips to the next level. In terms of what I think of ETC Labs, a lot of people have a lot of opinions on their kind of input into the blockchain. I've got to say that you can only judge people based on their actions. So we've seen all the stories from the outside, and then we've had this introduction to various people. So we've met Dean, I mentioned Liz as well before, and I'm not going to say that our relationships with them has been entirely smooth. We've had, we're kind of combative. We stand up for Slips, and because we come from this kind of very small background and whatever, we're kind of really fiercely protective of ourselves. But the thing is, we see how they respond to us as well. So, for example, with Liz, we've been a pain in her ass as well for a long time, and whether various things, and we've seen how she responds with us as well. And she's extremely protective of the first cohort, the startups there. She's always championing us. You've got Dean, who's kind of helping promote us and giving us marketing help. So, and it's just their overall effect. You're giving startups that need money the lifeblood that they need to kind of build on the ETC platform. So on the whole, I think what they're doing is quite positive. And the fact that they're actually funding the development team as well, and bringing that together with the startups, I think that it's a really good synergy there, because that was one of the crucial things for us, that we were able to work with the dev team. I think if we had built on any other platform, we wouldn't have had that kind of connection. So that was really important to us. I think that kind of sums up, my overall opinion on the whole thing. Maybe Carl's got a few, because he unlike me, I have this experience with him, but it's always over voice. He has day-to-day, interchanges with him.
Yeah, Kyle, do you want to add anything to that?
No, not necessarily. It's just been a great experience so far, and Liz, Dean, and Kit, Sharon, everybody in there has just been incredibly supportive while I'm out here. So
okay, all right, good. So did I forget anything, or did we touch upon everything we wanted to cover?
I think so. There is. I was hoping that you'd give us a chance to do a little bit of plugging, because that would be nice.
Okay, sure. Go ahead.
So the thing is, we are inching very close to the launch. The one thing that, and I think anybody who's read the article that ETC Labs published on us, they'll know that one of the things that's holding us back is the fact that we want to be fully compliant. Most of the streamers are in the US. That's where they're based, and that's going to be where we're targeting. And the US hasn't. They haven't been, historically, they haven't been very appreciative towards online gambling. There's a variety of laws and things that make it very difficult. So we need to be very compliant. So at the moment, one of the things that we're doing is a dual focus, where we're actually working with the legal team to try and make sure that what we're offering is fine and we're not violating any laws. But at the same time, we've got this Play Money token. So if you register onto Slips, you'll get 1,000 of these Play Money tokens. It's just a centralized token, and it gives us a chance to get people to play about with the system, make bets, and we can iron out any issues that are in the system. And I think you know how it is. You build a product, and then the last 20%, the little bugs, are things that can ruin the entire experience. So my shout out is, if anyone listening to this has the time, they can join us on Discord, which is https://discord.me/slips, or go to slips.io, and if you register on there, it would be really amazing if we could have the help from the community to test our application. It's hard for us to reach out to people. We have this small community, but the more people and the more eyes are on it, and if you report back to us, we can solve problems a lot quicker. That's about it. I think that would be the biggest help that we could get.
Okay. All right. Very good. So thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Husain, for enlightening us on all the work you're doing and on ETC Labs. And I just wish you the best of luck on all you're doing and will continue to do.
Thanks very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.